we were discussing about the implantation process in primates, and with that pretext we had already talked and spoke about how is the implantation happening in the female reproductive system of all the primates including women, right? Now the question comes, once the implantation is happened, the process is accomplished, what is the usual method in the initial period of pregnancy which maintains the pregnancy till 9 months or during the entire gestation period? We all know that when we discuss about a cycle, it is dividing into fertile and non-fertile. So what happens generally, once there is a process of ovulation, for example, you consider this table as a cyclic ovary and you consider this as a middle of the cycle. So let us take consideration as 14th day over here somewhere. So if at 14th day the ovulation occurs, then student, the regression of corpus luteum starts exactly after 12 days of the ovulation in infertile cycle, which will go and eventually ends into menstruation. But at this juncture, student, in primates, if there is a successful implantation takes place, which we have discussed in earlier lectures, then what will happen if the ovum fertilizes and subsequently implants within the walls of the uterus? The same corpus luteum, instead of undergoing a process of regression, in the due course of 10 days, it will try to retain itself. The question comes how? How it will retain? So we already see on the board, we see a syncytial tropoblast, which is a part of the ovum, fertilized ovum. So this syncytial tropoblast produces a glycoprotein in the blood of these females. Now this glycoprotein, take into consideration, is released by syncytial tropoblast and it appears in the blood. And this glycoprotein is referred as HCG, that is human chorionic gonadotrophin, or just it is called as chorionogonadotrophin. Now at this juncture, if we take the urine or the blood of this woman or a lady, then there is a detection of the pregnancy, because this protein, glycoprotein, whom we are referred as HCG, appears in blood and urine as well. So it is called as detection of pregnancy or a pregnancy test. Is it getting clear to you? Now this particular glycoprotein, which is synthesized and produced by the part of the embryo, is responsible for the retention of corpus luteum. So what is the role of HCG? Besides, detecting the pregnancy of a woman, its role is to retain the corpus luteum, and not only to retain, to initiate the luteal cells of the corpus luteum to produce progesterone. So what it is? It is a local hormone, because locally it is initiating the cells of the corpus luteum for the progesterone biosynthesis. Now it is an evident fact that we all require progesterone for the maintenance of pregnancy. Require means what? Peaks of progesterone, not just some couple of amounts. We require peaks of progesterone to maintain the pregnancy, and that is initiated by the glycoprotein molecule, which is developed as a part of implantation. And what are we discussing? What are we talking about over the days? We are talking about implantation, pregnancy, and eventually we are also talking about endocrinology of implantation and parturition. So initial phases में क्या होता है? The pituitary LH, that is the pituitary gonadotrophin LH, is responsible for the production of progesterone by Cl, that is corpus luteum, very initially once it is formed. But then we also require maintenance of corpus luteum, and we require corpus luteum to be getting turned into corpus luteum of pregnancy instead of corpus luteum of menstruation. So that is done because LH level drops in the mid cycle. Why it drops? It's a evident fact we have talked about that during the mid cycle the LH FSH surge is dropped. Then who will look after the progesterone? I mean the synthesis of progesterone to the level where the pregnancy is maintained. It is the role of corpus luteum. But then how corpus luteum is doing it? It is doing by the virtue of syncytiotropoblast. Because syncytiotropoblast is releasing glycoprotein HCG. HCG is initiating the luteal cells of the corpus luteum to secrete progesterone. And then that progesterone is maintaining it starts maintaining the initial phases of the pregnancy, or what we call as an implantation. Now during menstrual cycle, student, generally what happens? Progesterone secretion by the corpus luteum reaches to the peak only up to 8 days. But then corpus luteum realizes that ovum is not getting fertilized. Then that will drop down. So LH secretion and corpus luteum has no virtue or no requirement for living, because the ovum is unfertilized. So that happens in menstrual cycle. Now student, in most of the primates, if the egg is not fertilized, then the progesterone by the corpus luteum will decline and menstruation occurs. And then we call it as a non-fertile. But in fertile, when we can see on the board also there is an implantation and formation of the syncytiotropoblast, then the same process what I am discussing with you over the days will continue. Now the question comes, okay madam, we understood this local or paracrine factors which are happening in the pregnancy. But exactly if somebody asks you what is the role of the HCG, that is human chorionic gonadotrophin, is it just signature for the or key molecule for the detection of the pregnancy? No. Its major role is to maintain or to rescue the corpus luteum. Because then what is the role of the corpus luteum? In every cycle, either it regresses or it is maintained. So if there is implantation, naturally HCG has to be getting developed, and its role is to maintain, to rescue corpus luteum and thereby prolong its lifespan till somebody else takes over the functions of the corpus luteum. Then what is that somebody who is taking over the functions of the corpus luteum? Because corpus luteum of pregnancy, when we talk about, its role is only during the initial phases of the pregnancy. And then it will get degenerated or metabolized in the system or in the cycle, student. If we go to see the entire gestation period, then the levels of corpus luteum reaches to the highest or to the peak between the 9th to 14th week of gestation. And then by the 20th week, we see the lowering, or what we call as a nadir of this, the HCG. They eventually declines, and then you won't find HCG in the body. But at the same time, we find that there is lot of progesterone in the blood of these females, which is maintaining the pregnancy. Then which are the factors? If we see mammals other than the primates, what we discuss about rats and rabbits, rodents, etc., then in this organism, pituitary gland plays a essential role in the initial development and the survival of the corpus luteum. Whereas in case of primates and women, it is not the pituitary gland which is playing the role. Then what happens with the degeneration of the corpus luteum in primates? Estradiol, that is E2, and progesterone production is been taken over by somebody else, what I call as a transitory endocrine organ. And that's why I have been emphasizing, when you talk about study of endocrinology, it is not just the study of endocrine glands, but there are transitory organs, there are non-endocrine organs, there are tissues, there are paracrine factors, etc., etc. Let's not go over it or talk about it. But then the functions of the corpus luteum is taken over by placenta, which is a major chief endocrine organ, and it is capable of production, student, of the steroid hormones only and only with the help of the precursors which are present in the maternal and fetal tissues. It itself is incapable. We all know that anything we talk about, like hormone production, etc., we know that we require secondary messengers. We require hormone receptor complex. It's not the, alone organ or a gland can do its, functions. So student, placenta can take over the functions only and only if it gets precursors of wanted materials or wanted receptors from the maternal and fetal tissues. And then it takes over the role of the corpus luteum. Thereby it produces copious amount of progesterone, and it has got, student, multitude of functions. When a placenta takes over the function, what are the functions placenta is doing? Obviously, student, we know it maintains the structure and functions of the uterus. Now, uterus is playing a great role because the embryo is growing on the walls of the uterus. Not only that, it also looks after the mammary growth and the production. You follow, no? And it also, the progesterone and the estradiol from the placenta also looks after the inhibition of the gonadotrophins from the pituitary. Because now we do not require it. Now pregnancy has to be maintained. Pregnancy has to be, survived. So it's the great role placenta is playing. Follow, no? What another role is played by placental progesterone, what we call as a PP, that placental progesterone is also used as a substrate by the adrenal cortex of the fetal or a fetus, because fetus cannot produce corticoids or glucocorticoids, mineralocorticoids by itself, by its own adrenals. It requires placental progesterone in the womb of the mother. Secondly, placenta also produces placental lactogens. We all know its functions because it exerts variety of functions, student, and it looks after the maternal tissues, it looks after the lactogenesis, it looks after the luteal maintenance, and also placental prolactins looks after the formation and production and biosynthesis of the progesterone. And the whole idea of this is progesterone maintains the pregnancy.